Now you're very welcome joining us for a Clare Echo video special to look ahead to the start of the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. We're delighted to be joined by two of Clare's All-Ireland winning heroes, but from slightly different decades. So we've Darach Honan from the 2013 class, and Sean McMahon, fourth centre back in 95 and 97. Darach and Sean, you're very welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Páraic.
Cheers, Páraic.
And just obviously viewers of this series of videos last year would have noticed that we covered the championship, and this is our first since a lot of stuff I suppose has happened behind the scenes. And Darach, maybe to go to yourself firstly, people had said it was a few months of discontent within Clare GA circles. So what impact, if any, will that have on, or have had on, the Clare senior hurling panel?
Yeah, it's been a tumultuous off season. We were hitting the headlines for all the wrong reasons, I suppose, early in the year and late last year. So it won't have helped. It's not the way you'd like to have things. It would be great if we could be more functional as an organisation, because it has been quite dysfunctional for some time now, and it will have a bearing in terms of the players at the moment. They'll be able to play away, I think, without having a huge impact on it. I would say they'll still be very, very focused on their games, and it wouldn't have had any impact on their games throughout the league and that. But I suppose the cause for concern would be more so down the line, if we're going to continue as a dysfunctional organisation. That'll have an impact on our production of teams and our production of quality players for the years to come, as opposed to right now.
And Sean, just to quote yourself, obviously if we kind of go back to 98 slightly, there was off the field matters, which maybe might obviously of different natures, but from your own experience, did that have an effect in 98 when there is drama off the field?
Yeah, I did. I suppose. I suppose the worst thing with 98 was it was right in the middle of the championship. You know what I mean? It was going between the Munster final, the Munster final replay and the All-Ireland semi-final, and then through the 3 games with Offaly. So it was right in the middle of that period, like, and it definitely didn't help us. You know, with the best will in the world, you know, the noise was everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. We're in the headlines, and you know, you do try and remove yourself from it, but at the end of the day, it's very, very hard to do it. And I suppose the positive I'd feel with all that's gone on for Clare is that it's probably, you know, it's been going on a while. It was really, you know, an awful lot of stuff was going on there that, you know, was really disappointing. And you know, I think there is no doubt there's need for change. But I suppose, as regards impacting the players for Sunday, I think they're probably well used to that noise at this stage, and I think the thing has moved on a bit now. And so the hope for me would be that, you know, the players can, you know, will be more focused now and totally able just to get down to, because I think everyone at this stage wants to move on from that kind of controversy and those headlines. And, you know, it's great to have the championship to look forward to, but I mean, ultimately there's issues to be resolved. There's no getting away from that, and it's not that you want things brushed under the cover. You want them dealt with. But I think for now, and from a player's point of view, their focus will be on the match. And as I said, the fact that this stuff has been kind of going on with the last number of months, I think, you know, it shouldn't be impacting on them as much, maybe as it did in 98, because it was right in the middle of championship when that whole thing blew up for us.
And would you say so, Sean? It's kind of a case of almost pause button has been pressed on it and focus is now on championship, because obviously it wasn't the players involved in it, but that the matters will maybe be explored in a bit more detail once the championship concludes.
Well, I think they have to. I think, you know, and I mean, you know, the positive is this committee is in place. By all accounts, they're working hard, and I think everyone is really holding on now to see what they will bring and what recommendations they'll make. And then the challenge is, you know, how do we get those recommendations implemented? You know what I mean? So it's not a case of let's forget about everything that's gone on. We can't do that. I think, you know, we do need a bit of change. There's no doubt about it. You know, you see what other counties are doing. We need to get to that level as well. To you know, as Darach said, you know, it's not for this team; it's for the next you know, it's for the 8-year-olds now, you know, in 20 years, what kind of structures and processes are we going to put in place to make sure that we're up there competing for All Irelands in 20 and 30 years time, not just now. So I think, you know, there's a really good committee in place. They're working away, and I think everyone is really looking forward to what recommendations they'll bring. And then I suppose, you know, we'll want to see those implemented. That's how I see it anyway.
And obviously, as you say, attention has been on games and stuff. So Darach, just I suppose Clare's league campaign, how would you assess that, or you know, how did you rank it?
Yeah, it's been an interesting campaign so far. Like initially the games, so the first game against Antrim and across the board, the games were kind of more like challenge games than competitive inter-county hurling. The standard wasn't where we would expect to see our inter-county teams, and right across the board, not just Clare, in the first few opening games. So that led to us getting caught above in Antrim. But in fairness, while some of the performances have been slightly volatile in terms of, you know, inconsistencies in the performance, they have trended upwards. And from a bad start in Antrim, they went on and got a good, they got caught against Wexford despite having a good performance, I thought, that day. They just got caught in the last 15 minutes. And then they went on and got a couple of wins against Laois and Dublin, and finished really, really strongly with a great performance against Kilkenny at home. And I think that fact of it would have been easy, I suppose, with what we discussed previously about what was going on in the background, and then to get a loss against Antrim, maybe to drop the head. But in fairness to the lads, like, they've made huge progress. They have improved consistently through the league campaign, and to finish strongly against Kilkenny is a huge boost. So I suppose positive campaign overall. So if I was to give it a rating, probably I suppose about a B- maybe would be a good one.
Okay, so Colin Honan's marking system has been passed on to his son anyway. Sean, just about yourself, what do you think the lessons from the league would have been from Brian Lohan? Like, I was just looking through it. The lowest amount they scored 20 points plus in every game of the league. But were there other lessons you think he'd have got?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously, you know, they were trying players out in different places, you know, John Conlon being the big one there. And obviously then, you know, they would have blooded a lot of other players, you know, and I thought it was very encouraging the last day against against Kilkenny that, you know, we finished so strongly, because I thought in other games we had kind of dipped a bit as the game was coming to an end. So we finished strongly in the game against Kilkenny, and, you know, 3 or 4 subs were brought in and really contributed. So I think they'll have you know, from a lessons point of view, I think they know, I'd say now, where they really stand as regards, you know, probably their first team and their, you know, the 6 or 7 guys that are really in contention to come on. And I like to look at the team the way it's been set up. And, you know, I suppose the other thing is, you know, it was a tough time with all that was going on at the start, and you go to Antrim, you lose, and then everyone was down on top of them. You know, there's a great bit of spirit about the group, like, and great sense of honesty about them. And I think that really shone through. So, and even the last against Kilkenny, I thought for periods of the game we were excellent, and I thought for other periods, like Kilkenny, I thought totally dominated, like, but we kept plugging away, and, you know, got a couple of chances of goals and took them. So, so I think there's an awful lot to be positive about it. And I think they have learned a few lessons. I'd say, you know, they have a better idea now of their team. And I think probably the other big thing for me was, if I'm thinking of last year, I thought the half-back line needed adjustment from last year. You know what I mean? And in fairness, it wasn't any one guy in particular. There was different guys playing the half-back line last year, but there's a far better presence about the half-back line now. I think physical presence, and, you know, especially if you can have David McInerney in it, you know, and I think that's really encouraging. Like, so. I think they've got a lot out of it, and I think it's credit to Brian and the players and management that they're in this position. But I suppose, look, the reality of it is the real test start now.
And one of the things they're saying, like, John Conlon gone to 6, and you're impressed with the half-back line. So are you in favour, obviously, as people well know, your capabilities in the number 6 jersey? So have you been impressed with John Conlon at 6?
I have, like, you know, I know people originally were saying, I suppose, look, it was a huge gamble to take. Firstly, you had 5 games, right? If you're going to try someone like that in a position like that, you got to say, look, we're giving this person 3 games, right? If it's a total failure, where are you then? You have 2 games to go in your league before you play the championship, and you've no centre back. You know what I mean? So it was a big gamble, and I think a very brave call by Ryan to do it. I felt, in fairness to John, I felt he didn't set the world on fire initially, but he always looked comfortable in the position. And I suppose when he went in there first, people were nearly expecting, saying it was a crazy move in some sense. So they were nearly expecting him to blow it out of the water and be outstanding for people to be able to say it's working. So I thought he was very, very solid. He gives a great structure there because he holds the position well, he distributes the ball well, and you know he's a great presence there. And I mean, to be honest, I thought he was absolutely outstanding against Kilkenny. You know, he had, I think, Walter Walsh at periods, and he had TJ Reid at periods. You know what I mean? And he came out on top that day, and as well, I think when you think of he's coming back from a cruciate, he's gone beyond 30. I remember myself when I was playing that the older I got, the longer it took me to be right and get up to the pace of the game. So he had a lot to come back to and then into a new position. So I think he's done very well, to be honest, in fairness. And I think up to now, you'd say it's a great call. Hopefully we'll be saying the same on Saturday. But you know, I certainly would be happy now that he's there going into the championship after seeing him in the last few games.
And Darach, it maybe coincides with the point you made early on about the player going in the upward trajectory that John has grown into that role. He obviously was there, I think, 2015 for Clonlara's campaign when Sean Stack was in charge. Were you surprised to see, fair to the league, that John was named in the backs as opposed to the forwards?
Yeah, I feel slightly underqualified to follow Sean McMahon's evaluation of it, but I'll give it my best go. Yeah, I mean, I think like that, it was a huge gamble. I think the first couple of games were a bit of a struggle for him there, and like you pointed out there, he himself was on an upward trajectory. I think what stood out for me against Kilkenny was the improvement of his distribution of the ball. He really brought the players in around him when he got on the ball and used it really, really well. You see that with David McInerney was on one side and Dermot with the other, and he set them free for a couple of scores early days before Davy got hurt. And even after that, he continued to have a really good game. So that was very encouraging. Like that, now you mentioned it, in 2015 he played centre back with the club, and he had a really good season there. And he's well able to play there because he's a very good hurler. But having said all that, I'd rather see him in the forwards. I think that's where we'd get the most out of him. And I would be a big advocate for like David McInerney to be centre back. That's who I think should be there. But that's not to say that John isn't able to play there or anything like it. That's just the way I personally line it out. But hopefully, and I'm sure he is going to go with it now. He hasn't played anyone else there at centre back, and hopefully it will work out against Waterford.
And as you say, Darach, it is Waterford Sunday in Thurles. From what you've seen of them so far in 2021, do you think they're going to go further than they did last year with Liam Cahill and obviously coming up short in both Munster and the All-Ireland?
Yeah, it's a tough ask for them. They've had such a successful season last year. It can be hard to come back to it and bring the same level of intensity, because I mean, that's what Cahill bases kind of his whole game around, is just pure intensity, hard running of the team, and they expend a huge amount of energy, I'm sure, in training to get to that level in games then when they get out there. So whether they can maintain that for 2 successive seasons is the question. And I'll obviously be hoping that they won't be able to. But I would think that Clare would have nothing to fear going against Waterford this weekend. Last year, when we considered the game last year, Tony went down early on and wasn't himself after, and we were also missing the likes of Colin Galvin and John Conlon. So to be able to add even just those 3 back into the mix would make a huge difference, and we weren't that far away from beating them last year. So we've a really good chance going into this. and whether Waterford can maintain their form is a question for them to answer, but we'll be hoping that they can't.
And Sean, obviously Jamie Byrne is a slight injury out for Waterford. It'll be a massive loss around the middle of the field. But some of the commentary with Waterford has been the pace of their forward line. So do you think Clare's backline, Dave McInerney has said to be possibly in the reckoning, but we're going to have a new corner back in. So what way would you set up to overcome Waterford?
Yeah, I think like I'd have to say I've been very impressed with Waterford, and even to a small bit, even a bit more this year, because after you get to an All-Ireland final and you come up short in it, and then you lose 3 of your best players in the goalie, Stephen O'Keefe, Páraic Mahoney, and Tadhg de Burka, it would have been very easy to just have the excuses and fade away and have a poor league, and but I think Cahill has done a great job with them, and there has been no hint at all of feeling sorry for themselves or whatever, and they seem to, if anything, to have kicked on. So I didn't see the game against Tip, but all the commentary was that they ran the life out of Tip, and that, if anything, I think they won the game by 5 or 6 points. If anything, it was possibly closer to a 15-point game than a 5-point game. So there's no doubt they're dangerous. I think, I'd be really hopeful that Dave McInerney would play. I think, that half-back line looks very, very solid when he is in there. And there's very good pace then. Okay, John possibly doesn't have the greatest pace, but you'd have, David and Dermot Ryan would really, really pacey players, and John is well able to move. And from a full back line point of view, to be honest, I hadn't seen a huge amount of Aaron Fitzgerald, but the bit I had seen of him I really liked. I thought he had something, as regards, he's a really good defender, he's a good tackler, physical, good to come out with the ball, and I have a feeling he could be a loss. Now, in fairness to Paul Flanagan, he came in the last and played very well, I thought. And as well, you have Jack Brown there. So the Jack hasn't featured much, so I'm not sure what's the story there. But like Rory Hayes is brilliant pace. He'll probably pick up. Desi Hutchinson did a great battle last year. But, so look, at the end of the day, you've got to go man for man. I suppose you want your midfielders to sit a small bit. I don't think the sweeper is going to work. You can't just bring back a 7-man and expect him to float around and cover off all the angles. That's not going to happen. And I don't think Clare are going to do that anyway. So it's just, look, it will be man for man. A lot of it, I think, will come down to the supply of ball that's coming into the forwards. Darach would know it well. If there's good ball coming in, it's very hard for a back to do anything about it. So really, the whole middle third will have to be a war zone that Clare are going to have to just really dog it out and make sure that any ball going in is poor ball. And, man for man, the guys inside have to take it on then.
And Darach, obviously, very unfortunate news coming on Tuesday night that Shane O'Donnell is unavailable for the tie. Obviously, disappointment from that, but does it pose an opportunity for someone maybe like Ian Galvin to step up to the plate, or Mark Rogers to have a deadly debut?
Yeah, definitely opportunities. It's a shame for Shane. He had been showing some real flashes of form, and I suppose people will remember the great goal he got against Laois above in the league. So he's a huge loss. But like you said, there is an opportunity there now for someone else. And other lads have been tested. In fairness to Brian, he's given lads chances in the forwards. Brian Taylor came on against Kilkenny and made a huge impact, and Ian has been playing good stuff, and I think he deserves to get a start definitely against Waterford. I'd say the most upset man in Clare about Shane's injury might be Sean Doyle, because he might end up losing Mark Rogers from the 20s squad as a result. So that'll be a shame, but Mark has showed good form since he come in as well, and he's a player probably that we've earmarked from minor level, especially when he had a great campaign there. So it would be exciting to see him get a game against Waterford, and he's a guy that can get goals. So it would be an interesting one to see him thrown in there.
Okay. And then I suppose we'll put the big question to each on for Sunday. What way do you see it going? Who's going to come out on top?
Yeah, I think it's a very hard one to call. I think, both teams are probably, Clare played Kilkenny on the Saturday, and you were really on a high dough after thinking our trajectory is really in the right direction, and then Waterford come along and blow a tip out of the water the following day. So So along with Galway, like, you know, most recent good form, probably certainly Clare and Waterford are two of the teams in whose form is going the right direction. I think it's going to be a huge test. I really do. I think Waterford will be a serious challenge. There's no doubt about it. I think we're capable of winning it. And my hope is obviously that we will. And I actually expect us to win it, but I think it's going to require a really, really good performance right throughout the field. But I think if we can do that, we can win it. So, you know, I think that the spirit, they've shown the spirit is good. And, you know, if the farm can keep progressing the way it is and just go another notch, I think we'll get there.
And Darach, obviously people won't forget that you were, whether it was self-professed or it came about, but known as the Oracle last year for the predictions. So no pressure at all in what way you see this one though.
Yeah. No, that definitely wasn't self-professed. There was a lot of chatter. There was a lot of chatter around the county, but no, I think from looking at last year's game against Waterford Championship, like they say, you can learn a lot more from defeat than victory. So there was a couple of things that, like, we conceded some awful goals that day, and we missed some scores that we should have got as well. So if we can take away more learning than what they could have, I don't see why we can't turn around that result and get the victory, especially when you consider the players that we're adding back in and the players that they may be losing from that day. I think that we should, it's a game that we should win, and not to say that it'll be an easy game, but it's a game that we should and can win, and it's one to look forward to for sure.
Perfect. And on that note, thanks very much to Darach Honan and Sean McMahon for joining us for some great insight and analysis ahead of Sunday's quarter-final. And if you haven't already, try get your hands on a copy of the Clare Echo, which is a bumper feature looking ahead to both the football and hurling games this weekend. And there'll be more coverage throughout the weekend on clareecho.ie. So thanks very much for joining us, and to Darach and Sean.